I'd like to introduce Chris from Scotland, who has primary progressive MS. Welcome, Chris.
Hello.
Could you tell us when you first started noticing your MS symptoms?
It was around about 2004.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you at the time?
Maths has never been the strong point, but I'd probably be about 55 by then, yeah.
Right. And what were those symptoms?
Just the symptoms came on as a sort of problem in terms of my bladder control, in terms of just feeling very tired and so on. So that's how it manifested. But it was a very slow, progressive sort of realization that I put it down to my age.
Mm-hmm. So when were you actually diagnosed?
I went for initial tests in 2005, and the reason I did that is that because I was falling down in the street. People were looking at me as though I was drunk, but I was losing balance and tripping over and falling in the street. Mm-hmm. So I went to the doctor and they referred me on to our local hospital to get some tests. And between 2005, it took the neurologist concerned about 2 years to tell me that I had MS.
Okay. And how had your MS advanced by then? What were your symptoms?
Well, the symptoms were still there, but it's fair to point out to you that I was a busy man at that time. I had 3 retail outlets. We did lots of contract work and this sort of thing. So I was here, there, and everywhere, and everybody's point of reference sort of thing. So I was a busy man, and slow realization that I wasn't well ensured that I had to make some alternative arrangements for my business, and there was a lot of stress and a lot of difficult times in those days. Mm-hmm. So between 2004 and 2007, 2008, I think it was. Took 4 years basically to realise that I had a complaint that wasn't going to get me better,
Mm. So how did you hear about LDN?
My neurologist was a total waste of time at that time, and of course it took them 2 years to tell me that I had MS. So I invoked my rights on my private healthcare policy and chose another neurologist to go and see, and he confirmed the diagnosis. And it was at that time that the diagnosis of MS, I thought that we could maybe get that sorted out, or some treatment sorted out on my private healthcare. Private healthcare insurance turned around and said, sorry, we can't cover you for this treatment because you've had symptoms that related to MS. So as a result, I was then referred back under the same consultant neurologist under the NHS system. He wanted to give me a intravenous steroid treatment. I forget the name of it now. Over a 3-day stay in hospital and so on. Mm-hmm. And I point blank refused to take that because I don't want steroids. So I did a lot of research of my own and came up with the LDN remedy, we'd say, or solution. I read a book by an Irish lady whose husband was, I forget the name of her now, but I've still got
the book is Up the Creek with a Paddle, Mary Bradley Boyle.
Yes, Up the Creek Without a Paddle, that's it. And I read that and researched even deeper and further into that and decided, well, if Dr., I think his name was Bihari, mm-hmm. If it's good enough for these guys, I'll try that as a starting point.
Yeah.
I started to take it in various sort of. It took me a while to get my local GP to agree, but they did originally.
Oh, that's good.
The original source of my request for LDN was greeted by one of the GPs in the practice as, I'm not going to prescribe that to you. I've got a house, a mortgage, and a family to think about, and I'm not going to get involved in this sort of quack therapy, you know.
Mm.
So I pressed the point, left the interview with him, or left the appointment with him, pressed the point with one of the other GPs at a later appointment. And to be fair, she, who's the senior GP in the practice, saw what I was trying to do, presented her with all my findings, etc. And she had a look down the NHS list of LDN, of prescribed drugs, and found LDN. The problem being that LDN, as part of the NHS drugs listings, was there, but the filler in LDN was unfortunately as calcium carbonate. And my research through the drug company in Florida, whose name again I can't remember. But,
Skip Lenz.
Pardon?
Dr. Skip Lenz.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We had a look at their findings, and I listened to a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff from them, and went back to the GP and said, yeah, that's great if you prescribe the LDN, but can you do it with this filler? So I now, instead of having calcium carbonate, which apparently is it's a sort of counteractor to the LDN, it negates the effect. I now have a filler which is called Avicel, or I've never had anything other than Avicel, to be frank. So Avicel is the preferred filler for me, with LDN at varying between 3 and 4.5 milligrams, depending on how I'm feeling. And
so,
it's taken once a day.
Mm-hmm. How did you find...
This is all available through my local GP at no cost to me.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice any introductory side effects?
Yep. Had some great dreams. All sorts of weird and wonderful things for the first few weeks, but that settled down. And I now have LDN with absolutely no side effects whatsoever.
So has LDN helped you at all?
Well, I can only assume that it's had a beneficial effect, not knowing what the alternative would have been had I not have taken LDN and gone for something else. My theory, my philosophy on this is that I don't want to ingest any stuff that's out there on the open drug market, for the satisfaction of everyone except myself, So I prefer to go with the low bang of LDN rather than the big bang of some of the steroidal drugs and all this stuff, And I can only assume that the LDN is holding on to my MS condition and preventing it from progressing quite as quickly as I would otherwise normally have experienced, without the essential side effects of the steroid treatment.
But have you noticed any improvement at all, or have you just remained the same?
No, it's clear now that the MS is not going to go away, but there is no, as far as I'm aware at least, there is no sort of remedy that cures this problem. So my philosophy is that my life's now been modified in terms of not only the drug and the condition, but also in terms of my workload and work-life balance and all the rest of it. So I just keep taking the LDN, assuming that it's kind of holding on to where I was sort of 2 or 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, in fact.
So what I was trying to get there, Chris,
Yes.
this will be edited, but have you noticed any improvements at all in your bladder or fatigue or anything? Has it, I mean, is there anything that you've noticed is better? No. Okay.
No, the answer is to that I still have the fatigue and I still have the difficult bladder control and all this sort of stuff, and various other essential parts of the MS. But I've never seen LDN as a cure. I've always only ever seen LDN as a means of holding on to my condition at the point at which I first started taking it and slowing its progression.
But most people notice as soon as they start taking it that their bladder starts to improve and the fatigue isn't quite as bad. And I was just wondering, in the 2 years that you'd taken it, if you had noticed any easing of your symptoms, not taking them away, but any improvement at all in any of your symptoms.
Well, as I say, I remember quite clearly the chapter in the book that said that somebody had said, well, LDN isn't working, so I'll stop taking it. And their account of that was quite simply that within 3 days or so, they were all over the place. And they went back on the LDN and realized that LDN was, in fact, helping them.
Yes.
So I don't want to go down that route. Keep taking the LDN, keep taking the pills, doctor,
Yeah,
and,
but your symptoms are exactly the same in severity as they were when you started.
More or less. I don't see that there's been any great improvement at all. And
I didn't mean great. I meant even slight improvement.
No, it's I wouldn't say that it's in any way improved.
Okay.
I would say that it's held on to maybe a slight improvement when I first started taking it, that's for sure. But since then, it's kind of held on to it where it is, where it's at,
So you think there was a slight improvement when you started?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Chris. I really do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Then you have a good day.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.